people are talking about mainly are traders, by the way. But the problem of taxation has not been only on traders. Some NGOs are also crying over this taxation. Some business entities are speaking the same. Mr. Ochieno, do these people have a valid point, or to some extent there's a bit of exaggeration?
They do, and all of them should join UPC. Because as we're coming on air, we were having a conversation, the three of us. I think you were busy preparing the set. But one of the issues was about the founding values of UPC. Actually, going way back as 1940s, from the Bataka Party, we were already talking things to do with, as I said, fair prices, trying to bring communities together, what are the key services that the state, meaning then the British colonial state, was providing ourselves. But later, towards the late 40s, and in fact, 1950 critically, one of the biggest arguments then was looking at the national exchequer, and what the British colonial authority was delivering to the African peoples, and people were beginning to say, but what is our net contribution? So people were already looking at taxation. In fact, I've got a name, Olweny meaning born in the season of war. So part of the extension in the latter 60s, 1960, there was a major war in Bukedi. One of the reasons why Milton Obote is extremely popular, by the way, was very popular in Bukedi, more popular than UPC, was because, again, as a leader of opposition in 1960, he managed to challenge the British colonial authority and the Baganda agents, as these guys called them at the time, to release the people who had rioted against the establishment over taxation in Bukedi. It was a very, apparently, a war, serious war at the time. Up to 12 people died, but you can imagine it was war, and they call it Luanya period, the war of basically axes. Yeah, axes in the, is it hammers?
Spears.
No. What are these things that the Mutalima things? Really? Almost like axes. Hammer. Yeah, but no, it's more about these rounded things, but they're not very common these days.
They're like clubs.
Sort of like
in Uganda.
Metallic.
I think
hard steel.
Partly that, and then sometimes metallic. But basically, those are the things. So it was less about the other thing, and so it was very serious stuff. So people were questioning, why should we pay taxes at all? How much taxes should we pay? Are we paying too much taxes? And what we're getting in return? So fast forward, when you talk about the traders, the average Ugandan trader should not only join UPC, but the average Ugandan trader should now begin to very actively ask why they're paying taxes for. But that having been said, my disclaimer as a political leader, and indeed as a leader of a political party that's governed here using people's taxes to develop and grow, it's absolutely a responsible thing to do, and particularly as a progressive leftist. For us, people of the progressive left, we believe in taxes. We believe that people should pay their fair share of taxes. In fact, the higher earners should pay more taxes. For us, we don't mind even higher taxes. So if you can afford, you pay higher taxes. But once you pay the higher tax in the coffers, we're very conscious that people who don't earn should not pay, or people who earn little should pay less. And from UPC, from my perspective, we even have a threshold that in today's exchange rate, I think I would possibly say that under UPC administration, if I were president tomorrow, maybe people earning less than 3, 4, maybe even 500,000 shillings, but in my opinion, would radically not pay tax. Yeah, that's my opinion. That's my position. And what you do then, you do the progressive stuff, start from 500 upwards.
But you know that not more than 1 million Ugandans earn 1 million shillings.
That is actually very interesting. I was going to come to that. The tax person and the taxman will actually tell you about it. So paying taxes per se is not the problem. I'm asking people should be able to pay more taxes. All that the government needs to be able to do is to open up and make sure that we expand the tax base. But to do
what's
so...
wrong with what they are doing? What's wrong with what these guys, the people in government, are doing?
You're not allowing me to answer your very important question. So the traders have their different arguments and would follow very closely. But the primary reason is this. I had a meal with a fantastic friend yesterday, and we spent 90,000 Uganda shillings. And I was joking that I know almost certainly 20% of that money. I mean, 18%. So maybe 20,000 shillings of that went to the state as a tax. I came back on a very bumpy, shaky road. The day before, I had no power for 1.5 days. Right now, I was just coming from a carrier and I just saw an SMS message from a young friend who had malaria the other day, and the medical bill is 125. And I've talked on this program of how I know the other day my close relative was nearly dying, but they paid 56,000 shillings to have themselves rescued in very basic things to do with malaria. What does the state do with it? So in as long as we are gathering taxes from traders, and the traders feel that it's arbitrary, in as long as we are taxing them 10% and we're taxing billionaires 15%, basically that's a little being unfair. I'm giving an argument for argument's sake. In as long as we're taxing these guys, even if it's 1%, and they don't receive a penny in benefits, in terms of public services, they've got a right to cry. But because, interestingly, you ask me, I think the way the authorities are doing it is so arbitrary that I have a friend who is a big taxpayer, but he told me the other day he travels to and fro. So he came from abroad and he was home for Easter. And then when allegedly the Uganda Revenue Authority guys heard that he was around, so they sent in a bill of 40 million Uganda shillings for his business. So he was actually in my presence. And then he called the auditor or the accountant. They said, no, you don't worry, we'll talk to them, but we know them, it's the season. So if that is what's going on, whatever's happening on this taxation thing is shambles.
You remind me of a case where this car, the armored car of Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, was being imported, and the taxes were around 88 million. Then after realizing it belonged to Honorable Kyagulanyi, then they said the taxes were around 300 million. And then the question is, did the car change? I don't know. Mr. Kazooba, let me come to you.
Yes,
he mentioned something about tax inequality in what he submits. And also talks about return on investment. Ugandans are paying taxes. They don't see the taxes somewhere. And this is something that I may agree with to some extent, because the problems that Ugandans have are really too many. Do you agree with this issue? What do you think is really the basis for these strikes for taxation? Is it that Ugandans do not want to pay taxes, or there is something that should be worked upon, sir?
As I was coming, one trader was on some radio complaining. He said he profits 2,000 shillings on a bag of sugar. And the government takes away more than 100,000 from one bag of sugar. So if he sells 4 bags of sugar, he'll earn 8,000 as profit. 8,000.
Bags? Oh, you're meaning a kilogram? Bags.
Bags. Okay. But government will have taken more than 400,000 from his sales.
True, but yes.
Now, that becomes a problem. And I really would want to hear more from government. Are we taxing a small community too much? And the rest of the population is not paying tax? Because that is also a problem. That you will find just a small group of Ugandans carrying the entire burden of the country. So that is possible. And if that is the case, what are the planners thinking? I offered the Uganda Revenue Authority a solution. We even wrote to them. I said, look, you do not need to send people to villages and all over the country looking for taxes. Just utilize the LOC system. Because the LOC system understands each individual, what you do, how much you earn. On average, they can estimate. They will not charge you more than what you make. So utilize the LOC system. Let it be government policy. Put technocrats at LOC ones. Technocrats that can do counting, the census, the planning, each and everything. Pay them 2 million. We have so many young Ugandans who can be employed there. But it will save you a huge burden that data can be transmitted from the village. Each village will transmit its data on the businesses in the area, the earnings, what type of businesses. It even helps government on planning, on their parish development model. Now, that is not their thinking. For them, they would rather get people from Nakao and they begin chasing around shopkeepers. And you know, these days, shopkeepers are very well networked. By the time a vehicle reaches a certain stage, they will begin communicating, get out, and they will lock their shops. So, tax is not paid.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, we have to go back to the drawing board as a country. I've heard the president and the NRM government emphasize that they want everybody into the money economy. Then it will help on some of these issues. But we also want to understand, because I failed to understand their argument, getting people into the money economy. They're assuming people are working. They are not.
Yeah. Yes.
In Uganda now we are relying on dealers. You've just seen the published report. 70% of the population lives on borrowing.
Yes.
You borrow for school fees, you borrow for medicine, you borrow for food, everything you are borrowing, 70%. Now, that is a big problem for the country. If we are, and by the way, I've also seen another report which says that Uganda has the second lowest tax burden in East Africa. The other is, I think, Tanzania. Yeah. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. But for the taxation, people, experts must go back to the drawing board.
But there's something you're trying to forget in this particular submission, is that we have a problem globally first, an economic problem. Everything has been skyrocketing by the day. Even us here, it has affected us in some way. It has affected our economy.
Yes.
And
yes.
we also may have passed laws that Ugandans really wanted and supported, for example, the LGBT, and you understand some of the repercussions that come with that. So where do you think government should get the money? I thought maybe you can think and understand they're trying to also make you and other Ugandans survive at the end of the day.
Uganda, we have a problem. Me, for instance, the timing of the law, I kept asking myself, was somebody thinking, or it was a deliberate move to undermine the government? Because that can also happen, that I fight you through such means. The timing was so bad. We had just come from COVID. People had lost businesses. Those that were in town had closed, some had shifted to the outskirts, trying to make survival. They had started borrowing. Today, foreign currency that has been coming in through civil society and other channels, it's not there, it's gone. Guys have lost jobs. Now, it is an additional burden on government. Of course, the people within government might not feel it because they earn.
They don't.
You are going to pay the fuel, the salary, the treatment, everything. So they may not feel it. But out there, they have built a situation that can get this country into anarchy. It is very much possible. And we want to avoid that situation because people are desperate. And a desperate person is a dangerous person. So government has to go back to the drawing board. I've seen a very good initiative by the army that they are now doubling their salaries. At least for them it is okay. Where the money will come from.
In some cases more than double.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the military is now okay. But what about the other categories of people?
That's a good question.
And today there are so many young educated people, but they are not earning, they are not employed. What happens to them? So as you push for taxation, also put the money in the right places. Is this parish development model working? Is it functioning well? I know for some areas where they have stolen the money.
Yes.
It's not there. So was the PDM for just perception to try to show people that it's government is responding, and yet in actual sense they are not helping them?
How about this particular situation for the traders? Has government responded in a way that you think is responsible?
You see, there is a lack of openness, and that is something that has been bothering me. President Museveni does not believe in these people. He thinks they're actually dumping into the country. He doesn't want the people importing in Ichikubu. No. He does not believe in that kind of trade. He wants those that will go and process, manufacture things, and then they export.
Are you sure?
You have a lot of conspiracy theories.
But you just follow his talk. He doesn't agree with the people in Kasita. He does not. Although they are giving us some money, his focus is on how do you grow exports.
That's not his focus. That's what it
Gentlemen,
says.
let's go for a break. Let's go
for
for
40 years, you focus on that, and you will
2
not
minutes to
enable
8
it under government.
ladies and gentlemen. Let's go in for a short commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to start with Major Pollar Awich. A lot of things have been said by these two gentlemen. For him who speaks for the NRM and, of course, responsible for the Director Affairs, what does he think? Is this a problem, or it's another issue Ugandans are trying to raise? My name is Edgar. Let's go for a break.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, from that short commercial break. 2 minutes past 8 p.m. We are into the second and final hour of this particular show. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. I'm privileged to be joined by three gentlemen, Mr. Joseph Ochieno from UPC, Mr. Kazooba Charles, the Executive Director for the Center for African Affairs and Diplomatic Studies. And of course, I have the Director External Affairs, that is the National Resistance Movement. We're still talking about a lot of things. Before we went for a short commercial break, we're still talking about the issue of taxation that is going on in the country. And we've had Mr. Ochieno and Mr. Kazooba submit, and we're coming to you, sir. In your regard, do you think that these people have, first of all, a valid reason for what they're saying, and have you as government addressed their concerns in a way that is really amicable or in a way that is impactful, sir?
Okay, well, they could have a valid point. You see, as a society and as a country, as we move on a day-to-day basis, there are bound to be contradictions which arises on our daily interaction, and therefore they need to be resolved. So taxation is one of them. But I just like to say there's a broad claim there that no taxation without representation, and that had been a cry in some democratic development. Therefore, this imports or it puts in centrality the role of representatives. As you may be aware, every year that we get into tax regime, there's a law passed in Parliament, a law passed. Therefore, if these contradictions are rising, especially from the taxpayers, their views need to be heard. And one of the views to be heard is through their parliamentarians. I would be surprised that these members of Parliament do not interface with their electorate to bring this out.
Is that surprising?
It is in the interest of all of us that we want a fair and a democratic governance system, and taxation is in the center of it.
Yes,
so, like President Museveni met the taxpayers, these contradictions that do arise are always heard and addressed, and I'm sure this will be addressed, either by way of legislation or otherwise. So, but suffice to say now that a problem seems to be identified in a way of this contradiction manifesting itself. And problem identified is problem a half. Already the meeting is ongoing, so it shouldn't be such a big one.
Do you agree that these taxes are exploitative?
I was thinking that as I sat here, I was wondering if we had had a person in the theater of tax system. I may not be so competent to justify pro or against at the moment. As a party, I would look at the broad policy issues. But you can see that for me to criticize it, it needs the ins and the depth of it, so it needed an expert. And I thought it should have been, but I think should have been from the taxation officer himself, either URA or Minister of Finance person, because they are the ones, even when it came to legislation, they proposed the technical view. The members of Parliament will discuss it, but I'm pretty sure that the suggestion, like if you're passing a law from on agriculture, you'll meet farmers. Yeah. In other words, any law that is passed, you first have to meet the executors. So in this case, I do believe that the tax people give their technical input for the legislators to pass over it and pass it into law. So I thought it is. So I don't think competent to answer that, the validity or not of each specific tax, or even the tax regime per se. But I also want to say that I thank Ugandans that for now a year or two running, we have had problems with our development partners, either at bilateral relationship, like the bilateral meaning Uganda and US, but also at multilateral relationship, like World Bank and Uganda. So we have had problems, and it has had issues to really cut in a lot. It was not uncommon in the past where you read in a budget and you find 40% is funded by, like you have this one funded by Netherlands, this one funded by Denmark, this one funded by Sweden.
Yeah.
It's no longer. So I like to thank Ugandans that we are still up and running. Although the up and running, we are starting to feel it. But as I said, those contradictions will be resolved anyway. But I think that even amidst the challenges of our challenging financial relationship at bilateral level and at a multilateral level, we can still afford our services. No government activities are ceased. We are running a government as usual. We have read a budget and budget again.
Okay, you
now, maybe
okay, first respond to that.
The issue that we need to put on here is that, which keeps running in everybody's mind. I would be surprised if it doesn't run in anybody's mind, that the way that we generate revenue. But I think this is clear. Even the Minister of Finance, Matia Kasaija, said it, unless somebody was saying that was a, what do you call it, AI. Unless somebody was saying it was artificial intelligence. But I think this was body corpus. It was the real body corpus of my good old boy of Ntare School, Matia Kasaija, talking. He was saying that he was, I think, addressing the president, where he labored to say, we struggle to get this money. And it is sad that when we put it to the department in the end user, it is abused. And that should be a serious concern. And it is a concern to all of us. And we have kept on drawing to the attention of our national chairman, who is the president of the republic. So that is a concern, and nobody should think we celebrate it. I personally don't believe it.
Is your chairman really intentional at addressing
very
those challenges?
And that is why we can now not exhaust institutions, first the laws, the institutions that have been put in place, and decided cases that have been put. So all this point to the commitment of the urge to fight corruption. You very well know we have anti-corruption court. It is there. You want us to put anti-corruption prison? Maybe we should establish an anti-corruption prison.
We should set up one in the State House.
It's getting small fish. We've not seen the big fish.
We shall reach there.
Corruption.
So we shall reach there. So briefly, what I'm saying is that, one, I am not competent to say for or against the technicalities of the taxation, whether you're justifying this for this, like the particular case is talking about the sugar. If you call the taxation officer from URA, maybe its justification of government taking 400,000 for 4 bags and the businessman taking 800 for 4 bags or for 4 bags would be different. That's why I'm saying I'm hesitating to go to that detail of technicality. Somebody else could better do it. But I am saying problems identified now that the traders are talking, it shows a contradiction in our society. And I am saying problem identified, this problem I have. Already they have met the president. It will be resolved. But I also thank Ugandans that even amidst international challenges, we are still able to run our government.
So please comment on the fact that the taxation is really meted on a few individuals. Because when you look at the Ugandan economy, it's not that many Ugandans pay taxes directly. There are not many Ugandans that pay taxes directly. Do you think we should revise this particular provision to make sure that each and every Ugandan is paying taxes? They say they're paying taxes indirectly. When I buy fuel, I'm paying taxes. But it has shown that this has not brought in a lot of resources.
Why do I feel that is an erroneous assertion? I feel it is an erroneous assertion. To say that some Ugandans don't pay taxes
directly. No, I'm saying direct taxes.
Isn't it so?
Actually, the biggest,
isn't it so?
The biggest
is
percentage.
Is it a correct statement?
It is.
Yes.
No, it is wrong to me. Look,
look at
If the reality on
Let
ground.
me tell you. Any yoga, for me, for example, I wake up in the morning, I bathe using national water and sewage. I pay tax. Wait, let me
that's what
finish. Let me
everybody's saying.
finish. I take tea with sugar. I pay tax. I eat bread if I chose to. I pay tax. Even if you board a taxi, you pay tax. Even if you are driving, go to a petrol station, you pay tax. If you buy a bottle of water, so which Ugandan are you abusing that he doesn't pay tax? All Ugandans pay tax. We should differentiate between actually what you call tax collectors. For example, if you tell me MTN is the biggest taxpayer, really? Which tax is MTN paying? If there is a company tax for MTN, it is little. But I can assure you the tax MTN is paying is actually collecting from somebody in Karamoja, in Kasese, wherever, and handing over to government, to URA. So we should not really take Ugandans to demean Ugandans that they don't pay. They pay. If we're talking of a particular quotation, that bracket that is paid of a particular tax, then let it be stated as so.
But do you know there is,
that there is that other type of tax which has few people because of the earning bracket. But it's not correct to say Ugandans don't pay tax. Ugandans pay tax.
You're always complaining
All
that the tax level is first of all
then we
very
should
low.
put the you see, maybe the lawyer that I am, I want us to mean what we say and say what we mean. There's these jokes where a young man went to God and he prayed to God 3 things. He said, God, I want to grow up. Please make me grow. God said, granted. That when I grow up, I want to drive a big vehicle. Mark the word vehicle. God said, granted. He said, when that big vehicle must be full of beautiful girls. You remember? Growing up, meaning malaria should not kill you, drive a big vehicle, and should be full of beautiful girls. He's now driving the bus of Namagunga girls. So will he cry? So what is this sentence Ugandans don't pay? Do we really mean what we are saying, or we are thinking something else and we are talking another? And that reminds me of my father. You know, my father had many daughters. Sometimes he would be calling Akelo when he actually means Apeo. Until he starts quarreling with Akelo, then Akelo said, but Daddy, you are calling Apeo. So when we say Ugandans don't pay tax, Ugandans don't, do we really mean it?
Okay. Is the government, Mr. Ochieno, as you take your drink, is the government really intentional about saying we are addressing this particular challenge? Or is it an issue of prioritization, the things we prioritize are not? Because as Mr. Pollar, which says, you realize that to some extent, Ugandans are paying these particular taxes. But what is it the prioritization of investing these taxes? What do you think may be the lapse?
First of all, I had to make sure that I was the only one taking tea on a digital cup. And there's really nothing breaking news about it, but except to say that we'd just like to have much more younger Ugandans watch these programs and see that it's actually a cool program to participate in. But that said also, I think as Comrade Awich was talking, I just thought I would refer to what I think part of our conversation really, Comrade Awich, is about direct taxes, not the
You should
direct
state as such.
I think it should, they mean that.
State as
So in
such.
this case, it would normally, in this case, be possibly corporate tax, rental income tax, casinos, those places, withholding tax, individual income tax, So mainly the pay as you earn etal. I think that generally is the taxation. But of course, you're right that every citizen in Uganda pays tax, and that's why I said that actually most Ugandans should actually join Uganda People's Congress, because we are the party that would make sure that the taxes they pay, including on their fuel, goes back into their returns. I'm generally actually quite surprised by how shambolic NRA is handling this. I think possibly goes back to my experience earlier today, and I can advertise Makerere University because it's a public university and it's an institution of learning for most of our fantastic young guys. And the debate, the conversation today was around inaugural Guild Presidents Association, an organization that is going to bring together all Guild presidents, past and present, and build them into core sensible leadership. Big discussions were held, and of course the keynote address and the chief guest was President Chikwete, fantastic guy. And the more we discuss these things, the more talk leadership.
Yeah.
And the more we discuss leadership, the more we look at what we do when we have young citizens and young people. And I keep on wondering, as I was talking to a number of young guys who partly nearly delayed me coming here, who wanted to share some thoughts, or to hear some of my thoughts on some of the issues. And so part of the issue is really this, that quality of leaders that we've regenerated in this country in the last 4 decades, the nature of public services and organizations, and the nature in which, the manner in which we've been able, in particular unable, to generate responsible leaders in both public services, private sector, and generally holistic community. It makes me ask, who really are these days people who go on to become permanent secretaries? Who are basically the highest, the civil servant? For in your case, calling accounting officers. In my civics of those days, I would say the permanent secretary is the highest ranking officer in that particular ministry. In others, it would mean that the most senior expert, if the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Planning, is the most senior civil service planner, meaning he or she is able to manage and critique and recruit top directors, top economists in the country. What is lacking is that corporate leadership. You ask, away from the 1995 NRA Constitution on the Banyarwanda question, what does it take directors in the immigration department to sit back and say there's an issue here and make responsible submissions before these matters become crises that we discuss?
Yes.
Before somebody mobilizes people to go and taunt our poor ordinary traders in Chikubu, where are public servants, meaning in this case really technocrats, in government? And before that, where really are the political leaders, if they are? This will not go past a sensible president that you're going to attack the most vulnerable of the vulnerable in communities. In this case, you're talking about the traders in Chikubu, the traders in Akawa, the traders in Nakasero Market. When you look at their backgrounds, when you look at the income bases, and when you look at some of the circumstances of their families, many of those are women who are possibly without prejudice, single mothers, or responsible for a series of children. In many cases, perhaps, I believe they're wives of some dubious, crude, and drunken men without prejudice, but it's actually a common case that, and they're the ones struggling not only to pay rent, but basically to pay school fees. School fees for some of the children that perhaps maybe some of the parents are orphaned, remaining dependent on mothers and sometimes grandmothers and those women in Chikubu. But guess what? Under UPC administration, orphans in this country had free education. You get where I'm going?
Yes, I
so there's something fundamentally, structurally, institutionally wrong.
Is there a lack of interest?
Why then lack of leadership? It's not interest. Basically, lack of leadership. And I'm telling you, it's a national crisis. Just as we were saying, I think, possibly over break. These are some of the things that would actually create a mini revolution, a revolt in a country. From the tax thing to, as I said, a question of these shambles of potholes. Of course, granted, my brother suggests that reports that the NRA soldiers have been relatively lucky, have got relatives there, to have had their pay rises. So those ones got theirs. And then what about the police? What about the prisons officers? But even when it comes to the NRA officers, the entry to Nagongera from Tororo, my town, one is this terrible road that we continue to organize and push for campaigns and make sure that, thankfully, by this working very hard, Comrade Awich, you're in trouble. Because come the next elections, unless we have Nagongera Road, there is no voting for NRA from LC1 to Mr. Museveni's. That is what has taken the people of Tororo, particularly the people of Nagongera area, to take a position. And these people have been giving Museveni blank checks. But was Museveni taking them for granted? I'm answering you. Was it taking them for granted, or was it seeing? Roger, you go to Tororo town, 1.5 miles, 2 miles up to Rubongi Barracks, the army barracks, and I bring them. The road is actually impossible to pass. And that road has been there like that for the last 2-3 years. Ministers pass there. big people, men and women, pastors, some of them are really boastful people, including some of our communities. Don't they see what exactly is going wrong? But then next to it is Robong Army Barracks. And every time I pass there, by the way, Mr. Museveni, every time I pass there, I say that in these barracks, there are men and women, predominantly young men, you know, who are supposed to be defenders of our territory, and they sleep in this place. So I said, is there somebody responsible for army welfare? So when you look at, in terms of housing, by the place has become like a tiny little kraal. So this taxation issues brings you back. Who started thinking about it? Bottom line I know is that it may have been a panic, and Comrade Awich was being very diplomatic about it. Of course, he's a top NRM diplomat in this case, about thanking Ugandans. It's actually right to thank Ugandans in this, that Ugandans have been very generous. At COVID, I was one of the big campaigners, and thankfully I still had a major column in the Sunday Monitor. Every week I did COVID 1, COVID 2, COVID 3, in terms of writing columns. One of the biggest things that I did was not only about the manner in which that terrible woman was beaten up in Chikubu, how NRM bloated this blanket thing about locking out traders. Basically, their policy in terms of curbing COVID was fundamentally wrong, ill thought out. Then, of course, you know what they did about their drugs and this artificial witch doctors who came in alleged to do the medicine. But then beyond that, you saw those that the women who were being beaten in Chikubu. Like my two colleagues have said, but before that, I argued in one of my columns, the only country that I knew of, that I'm related with, East Africa and the rest of the world, that did not have any cushion for citizens over COVID was Uganda. And Museveni went on to economically boast.
Give us food.
You know? Oh, those charitable things, you know? Kind of stuff.
And 100,000.
No, sensible governments don't do the things that way, you know? So, for you to have managed, people have been cushioned, like Comrade Rich is saying, over this time. And then 2 years into COVID, like my brother is saying.
Yes.
And then you're going to tax, focus taxation on the miserable, of the most miserable, is actually shambolic and extremely necessary. But I know why, I suspect. Part of it is because of what Comrade Rich says, the development person that I'm calling the diplomat. Of course, money is being squeezed on this NRM regime from their so-called development partners. And indeed, Comrade Rich was talking about 40%. There was a time that it peaked at 54% of our current budget was then being supported, funded by new liberal friends abroad who were basically using Uganda as center for exploits. That is no longer. It's a more recent legislation around anti-homosexuality legislation, question of human rights abuse, both of which are true. You know, monies have gone on the short. So I think it's an overreaction. And I'm saying that even if it were, don't these guys have, they should come to Ochieno. Me, I've always said, you come for me, free advice. Okay. No, honestly, it's about this. I'll give you free advice. Yeah. Because some of these things, you actually don't need an overnight thought. They're instinctive. That's what I'm talking about political ideology. Instinctive, you just know you're making a mistake.
Let me start from there. Let me read a message from Miss Rita. She says, Mr. Awich's government behaves like a greedy and lazy elephant with a running stomach and malfunctioning intestines that can't keep food for long or use the little and available food sparingly. Sadly, it's the rabbit feeding this elephant with the little it can gather from the jungle called Uganda that barely has opportunities. To everyone's dismay, this greedy elephant blames its running stomach and appetite for more to the poor rabbit. Cry, beloved Uganda. Let me come to you, Mr. Kazooba. With all these taxation problems that we have a kind of leadership that you may say is very extravagant in nature, in terms of their priorities, in terms of where they invest the money. And he paints out a question of the leadership or the quality of leadership. Do you think this leadership that we have is actually intentional at solving these particular challenges, sir? And by this leadership, I mean Mr. Museveni and his team.
We require another revolution. And I'm not saying this just because I'm reacting, no. I've been thinking through it over and over for quite a long time. And I think we really need another revolution, a new radical revolution for the country to move forward. Otherwise, it's impossible, literally impossible, to do anything now. It's impossible because the system is so corrupted that it cannot support anything. It's so corrupted.
The corruption is
that
systemic.
even the mindset of the public servants, of the civil servants, is totally distorted. So for the country to move forward, you need a new revolution. You just need a new revolution.
Overwhelmed.
You just have to dismantle the entire
yes.
system and build afresh.
So that too radical and extreme.
Yes. And that is why when I'm interacting with these colleagues in opposition, I don't see a group or people that can do that.
Except
you
UPC.
need a radical group that can dismantle the system and build afresh with commitment and sacrifice. Otherwise, we are going to keep stagnated for quite a long time.
Okay, I get you, but is it an issue of prioritizing? Because I'm thinking if you were to rethink the priorities, you have maybe say, can we reduce the parliament?
Now,
do you want to reduce the cabinet?
Let me
Things like that.
Let me give you a scenario, a very funny scenario. A parliament passes an anti-homosexuality law, which leads to donor cuts. And they are giving themselves money.
Kickback.
What can I even, tokens of appreciation that we've done a wonderful job.
Tokens.
Yet, the people you are getting that money from are suffering.
Yeah.
Their businesses have literally collapsed because of COVID. So, you must be a monster to be thinking like that. Let me tell you, some of these people are lucky that the president is there to protect them. But the population, the day the population turns against these people, they'll even have nowhere to hide. I can tell you for a fact.
The president is protecting them?
Of course, you know, the president is like a father figure to everybody. So you commit so many wrongs, says, okay, you see, you are my daughter, you are my son, please come back home, but don't do that again. Now, that is not what this country needs. If you want to move forward, you must be intolerant. Discipline should be the key to everything. You cannot deliver results, get out of the office. Every government employee should be results-oriented. If you cannot deliver to the expectation of your country, please get out, go home. Another person can occupy that office.
Are you ready for such a system as a people? Not the leadership itself. You as a people.
The entire population wants what I'm telling you. That's what they want. They are fed up.
But Chagulanyi tried to do that in his particular organization, and
you see,
saw how
Chagulanyi is not different from that mentality. He's one of them. He isn't. He's not.
Okay.
What struggle are you talking about? You're riding in an armored Land Cruiser. What struggle? Whom are you fearing?
The people who I'm trying to eject.
The people who voted for you?
No, the ones I'm trying to remove from power.
Oh, come on. But they allowed you to even be on the ballot paper. So what kind of struggle? Whom are you trying to deceive?
Edgar.
Yeah, as I bring in Mr. Awich.
Yes. No, I think this is a very important conversation. And I was saying that you're being unfair to Charles because the early part of his submissions had actually given you a complete answer.
Yeah.
And as a TV host, you knew exactly what it was. So any further submissions, unless it was a devil's advocate, was not necessary, because it lowers the gravity of the whole thing. What in part he said is basically what, surprisingly from me, the politician, had said in slightly much more mild way during the UPC revolution, because I talked about it. This is fundamental what we talked about. But I qualified it earlier too by saying that it's a question of leadership. And in other words, we all know what the issues are. He's calmed it down again by, and it has to do so by saying that, Mr. Museveni can't do so much. The point is, this thing is rotten from the top. It's basically, there is no circumstance under which this nonsense happening would happen under Dr. Milton Obote as president. There's no way. He certainly would not have done it. Not forget even about policy perspective, but the human guy that I knew.
The person of Obote.
No, he wouldn't. Number two, that our farmers, our peasants, as we would call them, struggling in Chikubo, and you're going for them, he wouldn't. And particularly you're going to Chikubo, as he's saying, you're going to the people in Chikubo who just about manage to make a profit of, say, 600,000. So sometimes they make more money than an average banker. That's true, That they possibly make 600,000-700,000 shillings a month, profit. And they've left their homes at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're returning at 11 o'clock at night, sitting in that showering, beaten thing with the floods picking them and packing them to Kampala. A month. And I've told you that they've got 3 children. Maybe the first one, whose father maybe died, and is not entitled to free education that UPC would provide. They're providing for that child. The child has finished senior 4. They cannot proceed with education, but they still need to pay for them to go to YMCA, something that would have been free under UPC administration, And you go on and on and on. And yet at the same time, a dubious legislator is being given 500 million shillings. And out of that, it becomes apparent that it was a deal worth the billions. Yes. It's a club thing in the National Assembly. And it's business as usual.
Okay,
Did you get it?
Let me bring
to me as Ochieno, it hurts. And when I'm telling about the Tororo Street thing, it hurts. And when I was telling about the text I've got here, about a young Ugandan not far from the studios, young, beautiful, hard-working young Ugandan, not far from the studio, dodging to go to hospital because they suspect fever, but because they know they need to carry money in order to go and make sure that they carry the test.
Yeah, that's true.
No, this country needs a revolution, and the sooner it happens, the better. Just a quick guarantee is this: that revolution does not need to be breaking people's necks in Luwero like Museveni did. That revolution does not need to be, breaking buildings along Kampala. He's absolutely right, Charles. You're right that we, the opposition, are lacking, are lacking in certain ways. But I still believe that a more conscientized Ugandans, together with ourselves, including people in NRA like Comrade Awich and others, we basically need to wake up Uganda, simply say, no, enough is enough. It cannot be business as usual. We need to restart afresh. And that restarting afresh can begin to have a new alternative leadership, either through existing mainstream political parties like Uganda People's Congress, or maybe in other organizations simply say, no, Ugandans, we've had enough. And when you do that, you can turn around this country. Mr. Museveni goes packing, and you recreate a complete new culture in this country, in which people's monies go to do the right thing for our people.
Okay, thank you so much for watching. It's just 35 minutes past 8 p.m. You can see Kakwenza, you are here, Gurukirabaseja, Brooke Williams, Kikomeko, Joram, Ali Bobo, Robert Mayanja, Nana Mwafrika, Zerida, all of you, thank you so much for watching. This is the Hotline Show. Major Awich, I'm coming to you. You, the people of NRM, especially your leader, you preach water and drink soda. Every time we are coming to trickle down to look for who is corrupt, who is doing something wrong, who is taking Ugandans' money, your leader has been at the helm of it. A case in point, he was in Buyende recently, and after all these allegations that were raised against the speaker, Mr. President came up and defended the speaker. Mulyagonja, while she was still the IGG, she said every time she goes looking for people who are corrupt, it's always behind the president, and he's always the one defending them. When he talked about the audit for the UPDF forces, remember what the president said. Is your president and you people really intentional about serving Ugandans, or is it time for you, for your leadership quality to be checked?
Is very committed to Uganda, and our leadership is being checked repeatedly, and it has been found and given a good bill to continue. Now, let me first talk about my colleague's urge for a revolution. And I think he has his definition of a revolution. And Comrade Ochieno also has his definition. Ochieno said it doesn't need to be cutting necks on the street. So,
does not have to be.
But they seem to agree on a common denominator of a revolution. Now, what I want to say here is that we have the famous Article 1. Article 1 says power belongs to the people. And therefore it means that in whatever perceived omissions or commissions by government, the ultimate exercise of power is on the people. And this is done every 5 years. So, if we feel that NRM is not doing enough, you don't even, since Comrade Ochieno was trying to struggle with the definition of a revolution, you don't even need any violent change. You have a 2026 election. Let's consult the people, and we bring all these issues to the people. Then the people will vote. And that is what has been our consistent prayer, that every 5 years we subject ourselves to the people's will, and people see.
The last time you were in the people, 50
yes.
Ugandans were murdered. Even up to today, their report has never even been tabled.
Yeah.
Is that what you call an election, sir?
No. That's a topic of its own. But what I'm saying is that we all aspire to have a clean election. And that is a very strong checks and balances that we want, so that the people exercise the provision of Article 1 of the Constitution. Power belongs to the people. Sort of that, we shouldn't advocate for something near anarchy. We shouldn't advocate for lawlessness. We shouldn't advocate something of akin to a failed state. But we know that power belongs to the people, and all of us would want a credible election. I have told my friends again and again that for us we take opposition as a government in waiting. So if these people so choose, then they'll have an alternative view. Now, my friend goes further to say even those who are posturing in the opposition are not fit. So, brother, you may have to import people from planet Jupiter, but what I know that these are the Ugandans and those are the leaders. And remember, a generation produces what it has. If it produces a musician like Bobby Wine, be it, that is them. So you're not going to planet Jupiter and bring a new one. If NRM has this, that is it. So if your revolution now envisages people outside the current leadership, you'd be lucky to have it, but a generation produces what it has. It doesn't bring from planet Jupiter. So it is what they have, and it is what they can offer for now. So therefore, I wouldn't advocate for anarchy. I wouldn't advocate for lawlessness. I wouldn't advocate for a thing which takes us to a failed state. I would rather stick to Article 1, where power belongs to the people, and they are guaranteed that access every 5 years.
They are not guaranteed, sir.
They are. They are guaranteed. You can have a peaceful election. You can challenge it in courts of law. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, in your own conscience, Mr. Awich, you're speaking from your conscience. For the last many times that we've had an election, do you think anybody can take power here in that election, where your leader came out in 2011 and said, a mere paper cannot take me out? And he was right. He came by the gun, didn't he?
You know what he meant was that I'm forced to explain what he meant, and yet all of us heard, because of the contextual position that was put out of place, just including the out of context of the audit lifestyle, which was taken out of. The out of context here is that the president was saying, if being in power means voting. Voting means I have to do what the people need. So what will fail me by meeting the people's needs and getting the paper? That is what it meant. It did not mean that you can't vote and you can't remove me. It was simply saying the problem is known. I have to get the votes. And if it is just working for the vote, which means meeting the people's aspirations, I will do it. So it was taken out of context. The same thing with the audit. Audit query, actually, I wonder why it is taken out of context. Because he qualified it. He says, if you do audit now before preparation, preparation means here you have laws in place about capital outflow, you have technology in place to monitor capital outflow. He says if you don't do that without the legislative system, without the technology to monitor, even mere exhibit that Mr. Which has stolen and built a hotel will not be there because you lack the capacity to monitor the outflow. So for him it was more on the way of evidence collection than actually saying you are free to steal as long as you build in Muyenge. That is the thinking.
In his mouth, really.
No, this is what he even qualified it. He even qualified it. So these are things, statements that are taken out of context and twisted for some other people's interpretation or misinterpretation to quote to create an impression. Now,
Mr. Kazooba, do you have any submission on that particular issue?
I wanted to correct him on the anarchy he's talking about and the revolution. Major which is government is already driving the country into anarchy.
How so?
We are not calling for anarchy. It is the government already driving the country into anarchy. It's going to happen. It is going to happen.
Okay.
Because you see, when Bobby Wine came in 2021, me, I saw Bobby Wine as a messenger. That the message was, Uganda, redeem yourself. Of course, I didn't see Bobby Wine as somebody that was going to lead the country. But I saw Bobby Wine as a messenger. So it was incumbent upon the people in charge to understand the message that there are two classes totally apart in this country. The people in the lower class are so bitter that they can do anything because they don't lose anything. Now, it was supposed to be redemption for Uganda. But look what is happening. Stealing from the people.
Themselves.
And sharing. Is that redemption?
Because of time, let me come to Mr. Ochieno. And I want to start from this issue. And feel like sometimes overly zealous towards Mr. President or Mr. Museveni, because there are some people who we can actually address and say, the person of Amo, the person of this gentleman Puga, the rest of the team, them as individuals, can't we just address them and say, because the problem, as you're talking about the corruption, the extravagance, it stems from these particular people. Don't you think to some extent you are throwing a stone to someone far-fetched?
What is overzealous about leadership and responsibility? What is overzealous about this? In this program, you are the most responsible person because you're the anchor, you're the host. You know, ironically, as it happens, anything that we say here is basically irresponsible. In fact, should the end of the three of us decide sort of to misbehave, you know, the impression is not only on you, because they don't even think about the producer who invited us on your behalf in case you did not invite us, but it's about up to you, and the impression is on you. And if I overstretch my mark and I'm unreasonable to my two colleagues, the impression is still on you that you failed to manage the program, to manage the incident. The point is that, well, the buck stops with the chief, Mr. Museveni. This is Mr. Museveni's thing, and please, you're a young guy. In fact, I think you're the youngest in the panel. Don't stretch there. Don't go there, because that's exactly what Museveni and these NRA guys want. That at any time, you shield the master. You shield the master. You remember the narrative that everything that happens in Amin's time and is negative is Amin, and anything cheeky energy, that anything that happened Obote's time, including all the good ones, they turn it as negative to Obote because they wanted to demonize Obote. And it's not because they wanted to demonize Obote because Obote was bad, but they wanted to demonize Obote in order to create grounds, in order to create the nonsense and the mess that they've atrociously committed 40 years on after that. Mr. Museveni is absolutely responsible. I think Charles referred, onto, was it about you? This thing about corruption. Betty Camille says we want to go for the big ones. He said, don't touch them. People complain about whatever's happening in the Legislative Assembly. Said, no, that's my system. I got it. You want to contradict yourself.
You remember
Pineti? Well, that's my girl. Museveni with his girls, man. That's my girl. But you can have your funny girls, man, Mr. Museveni. But please don't have girls, who are dubious, who are possibly not even Ugandan without prejudice to their identity, but actually busy sucking our billions and billions of shillings, and our people are dying, not only in abject poverty, but in many cases from basic non-communicable diseases.
Yeah.
No, it is up to his responsibility. He's the chairman, he's the chief, and in any case, he's the one who's actually the Republic House, although he occupies the Republic House by force and without a mandate, like you said. No, it is really also about the leadership thing that I talked about earlier. In any case, Charles is challenging us again, political leaders, that not only is that Mr. Museveni is the one we should put on the podium at the peak, but it's incumbent upon us, political leaders, to provide the leadership in order to deal with some of the alternative constructive response, and to this meaning to mobilize the vast majority of the people and to try and teach them the fact that actually it's their monies that the Mongs are dancing with, the monies that the Kasajas are dancing. But talk about that actually, the anarchy that Charles is talking. Can you imagine that regime that is headed by a guy from Ontario can boast about, was the Minister of Finance, it's not my minister. Matiega is in Terry school teaches bad manners, man. So this guy goes ahead and the Minister of Finance and then goes ahead and steals, the guy ahead and steals iron sheet from the poorest of the poor, from the most vulnerable of the poor. Tell me that's not anarchy.
He said he found them in his home, but the question to me
okay.
But is it the only practical solution to these problems is demonstrations? Because these days it's cropping
No, it's
up.
not.
So how do you think, apart from that, how could this
demonstration is one of them. Anarchy is the other. I think Museveni will prefer that. Because he's an anarchist and the guy likes violence. Since 1966, he would tell you. No, I think the most sensible thing is a critical mobilization of the citizens of Uganda, particularly led by predominantly young people, and waking them up to the realities, basically sufficient civic education, if we took that to the broadest sense, making them angry enough to know that in every pothole, Museveni is flying in 30 jets, all of them new fast vehicles and all their money. And that once people do that, you can actually do it also through elections that Comrade Awich is saying. Actually, I also believe that it's actually possible, to mobilize and organize a critical number of Ugandans to throw out this lot, through the ballot, which I know they fear very much. Okay. If you see what happened and what we did in Dokole, we gave them a bloody nose in Dokole. And it was part of organized conscious resolve of the citizens. And it can happen across the country. Oh yes. Today I got one person from NRA, and I got 4 a group of students from Makerere University meeting me just in the corridor and voluntarily seeking to join and associate with me. And most of these children, in fact for the students, none of them is actually from the north and the east without prejudice. No, this thing can happen across the country. Okay,
I look at that and...
If you don't mind, just quickly.
Yeah,
no, I think, yes. I think the challenge that is back to us again, political parties, is partly what Charles was talking about. That any organized alternative arrangement against Museveni, and that is under an alternative Museveni, must be one which seems tangible, credible, and one that will genuinely deliver. So in other words, leaders like ourselves, we need to be able to be seen to be credible, be seen to be speaking people's language, be seen to be guaranteeing the possibilities that not only are we alternatives, but we are not all the same. So therefore, people who in the NRA, I mean UPC, DP, and FDC who sing with the NRA guys in the night, they confuse our citizens a lot more.
Well, because it's tedious a task.
Yeah.
This person you are fighting, Mr. Museveni, always has a leader in literally
we're opposed to him.
every district. There are some districts where you find the opposition does not even have a candidate, and these people bring a legislator unopposed. So I'm looking at the practicability of that. But let me come to him, because we are coming to the end of this particular discussion. Only 9 minutes to go. Sir, how do you think, you talk about a revolution, but are there other ways you think are more immediate? I was going to use the word practical, but let me use the word more immediate, that you think you can address this extravagance and the problem that we have in the country?
It's not possible. You can't. You see, President Museveni practices politics of compromise. Of course, any politician would want to do that. And his strategies are patronage and coercion. Now, of course, he does that in order to build a consensus, so that a number of political forces can have one destination. I'm only giving the ground because now, like for President Kagame, for his it is purely coercion in order to arrive at consensus. Yeah. Now, those strategies have become problematic.
And sustainable.
It's no longer sustainable. The resource envelope is small, it's not expanding, but the people you need to compromise are growing. The size is growing bigger by every day. So it becomes a challenge. Now, what happens is that because you cannot satisfy the insatiable appetite for public resources, they begin stealing. Now, because there are people you want to compromise, when they steal, you're not going to throw them in Ruziga. It becomes a problem because the person you're throwing in Ruziga is a son or a daughter of somebody that helped you in the bush. So the system is very complicated. That's why I'm telling you, it is impossible.
Okay, we have 5 minutes to go. This is to you. Mwesige Joram, thank you so much for watching. You say, Awich prefers lying than being reasonable and objective. And now you continue in capital letters saying, he is a victim of the system, he fears to reason and the truth. In bracket, conclusion, compromised. And thank you so much, Councillor Aaron Kiza, for watching. I can see your message here saying good points. Thank you so much. Major, as we come to the conclusion, I want you to add in your parting shots, but also respond to this gentleman's message of you, and then generally, what do you think you are doing practically, something that we can see as Ugandans, to address the economic crisis, and also address the problem of extravagance?
Well, to my viewers who think I lie, I don't think so. Maybe if it's the kids I know, I'm surprised.
No, it's not Kiza who said that. Kiza is watching. The person who said that is called Mwesige Joram.
I'm surprised because I have known of many viewers for knowing me to be so impartial and truthful. But if today or before I portray that, then the judgment is yours. But I've never been a liar before because I'm a clean professional who does my thing in the open. Now, about extravagance, it is actual extravagance versus maybe corruption. For example, if you talk of extravagance, for example, you mean saying buying expensive vehicles for ministers. If we know the money has gone there, it's different from actually stealing it. For example, you would talk of extravagance by the amount of cost of vehicle in parliament, for example. But I don't think it's the same like I saw in some social media where the leader of opposition is stating money which has been. So that is not extravagance. And I just like to say that abuse of funds, I said it here before, is condemned and rejected by NRM. And you can find this even at the highest forum of NRM, like Central Executive Committee. You would see SEC members arguing and agreeing and telling the chairman that this is not a way to go, and the chairman agrees. And that is why I'm saying that this can only be seen by its transformation into operational systems like the laws, the institutions like courts, the arrest, the prosecution, the conviction. Of course, the conviction is at the discretion of the judge. But practical steps that should attest to the words that have been said, that the consensus that I say agrees in the right forum and condemns this thing. Is not enough to condemn, but to practically show it. And I think we have illustrated that, and we shall continue to illustrate.
Okay. He continues to say that Mr. Mwesige Joram says the point was he is not reasonable and objective as per the analysis of the situation in Uganda. Then I'm coming to you, sir. This is a message that goes to you. Is Mr. Ochieno truthful saying that he, UPC, gave NRM a bloody nose? He should be honest to say that it's another wing of NRM disguising as UPC that won Dokolo. It wasn't just NRM in the red color. It wasn't just NRM in the red color. I think she wanted to say it was just NRM in a red color, but never UPC, as Mr. Ochieno suggested.
No, I think that's a very important point, because I know NRA guys have used that to try and smoothen down the pain of defeat in Dokolo. But number two, I think it's particularly very important for young people, especially young people who've lost confidence in politics. And this is very important to talk about the anarchy. Basically, I was with the chairman of the Electoral Commission, also amongst others at the Makerere University today. And I've been somebody who's been quite involved in the political process, democratic process across the world, including encouraging young people to be actively involved in politics. And one of the reasons, and part of the things that we are having global debates about is young people actively participating in civic spaces. I know it's a concluding remark, but I think we need to make this. It's very important that young people engage constructively. It's very important that young people have the confidence that their votes will count. It's very important that young people engage and that they have hope, you know, that when they engage, there will be outcomes. But it's also very important that young people need to know that they engage, and out of that will get quality leadership. And it's very important, therefore, that young people also know that it's actually possible to defeat the mess and nonsense and the likes of Museveni's. In Dokolo's case, I was in Dokolo for 2 days. I'm delighted I was there. I am absolutely opposed to Jimmy Akena and Debeta Mongi and Museveni's deals, which I've said so more than anybody else on earth. But I was there to support a UPC candidate who was actually a fantastic candidate. And I'm delighted by the work I've been doing the last 3 years to try and restore hope and civility in this thing. What happened in Dokolo, you know, was a genuine UPC thing and a genuine UPC wing. And it was not anything to do with NRM. Let people in NUP, where they've got strongholds, have the confidence and hope, mobilize and organize, and let this happen to all other political parties across the country. It is possible to defeat NRM in the ballot. We did so in Dokolo, and we're going to do a lot more.
Let me just conclude with Mr. Kazooba. Please give us your parting shots as we finish this particular discussion.
You know, these days I have very radical views, but also very truthful, because if we are not truthful, then the country is going off track. So my appeal to every Ugandan, politics matters to all of you. Don't stay away from politics. Reorient yourself, decide what is good for the country, and stick to that.
Thank you so much. Mr. Awich, in just a few seconds, something.
Extravagance extravagance is criminal, just like corruption is criminal. In a post-independence nation state like Uganda, we just can't afford to spend unnecessarily. There is no need for these big convoys, whether for the ministers and the presidents and MPs. There's no reason whether MPs should be paid a huge amount of money like they're being paid. It's absolutely the case that this government, this regime is extravagant, they're irresponsible. The majority of the people need to begin to hold them to account and demand for more services for their little money, and particularly because the window for money coming in is being shut, like Comrade Awich is saying, is the more reason why leadership must come from the top. Mr. Museveni should begin riding in a 5-vehicle convoy rather than 50 as he's doing so, as he's doing at the moment.
Mr. Awich, in a few seconds.
Few seconds. I go back to the basic taxation. I just thank Ugandans that we can support our government and we are not a failed state amidst challenges with our development partners. But I also note that the challenges that are being met by the traders are met and found, and a solution will be found.
Okay, thank you so much, Major Awich, Mr. Ochieno, and of course, Mr. Kazooba. It has been a privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to have you right here. Up to this time, it's exactly 2 minutes past 9 p.m. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. Please do follow us at The Alternative Uganda, at Digitalk TV, Facebook, Twitter, and all other social media platforms. Please follow me personally at Edgar Matthew Karuhanga on Facebook and on Twitter. From the entire team, I'll see you tomorrow. Good evening, and God bless Uganda.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.